Imagine stepping into a quiet bakery at sunrise, only to discover that the shadows inside are alive, watching you, calling your name. This is the story of a promise a sun could not escape, a recipe that should never exist, and a darkness that refuses to die. Stay with me until the end, because what happened inside this bakery will shake you far more than anything you expect. The baker's promise. The warm morning light drifted through the bakery window, carrying the scent of flour and melting butter. A soft breeze passed outside, shaking the small bell above the door in a gentle rhythm. Pat, a young baker devoted to the promise he made to his mother, stood stirring dough with slightly trembling hands. He felt that something in the shop was different today. The stillness of the air pressed down heavily, making each breath harder than the last. His eyes shifted toward the old wooden table, the place where his mother had once taught him to bake. The morning light no longer reached that spot. The corner was swallowed by a heavy shadow. Pat swallowed. A strange cold slid slowly down the back of his neck, like a fingertip dipped in ice tracing his skin. He stepped toward the corner. His heartbeat hammered loudly in his ears. The familiar sweetness of vanilla, mixed with a strange metallic scent that did not belong in the bakery. The wooden floor creaked beneath his weight, as if warning him, or urging him to come closer. A breeze that should not exist inside a closed shop rushed past his ear, carrying a faint whisper, a voice that sounded like someone he knew calling his name. Pat froze. His hands turned cold. Goosebumps rose along his arms. The shadow on the table shifted softly, as if something inside it was beginning to move. He drew in a breath, and stepped closer again, even as every instinct in him screamed to turn back. But he remembered the promise. The one his mother left him, on the final night before the bakery became his. The whisper grew clearer, right beside his cheek, and within the darkness before him, something began to reveal its shape. Inch by inch the shadow thickened, slowly gaining weight, slowly gaining form, as if the darkness itself had begun to breathe. Pat felt the air shift around him. Heavy, dense, alive. The scent of metal grew sharper, tinged with the bitterness of something old, something hidden far too long. He raised his hand toward the table, just close enough for the shadow to sense his presence. His fingertips tingled, as if the air around the corner had turned into static, buzzing softly like wings trapped in a jar. His breath caught. A thin sound escaped his throat. Not quite a gasp, not quite a word, but a sound pulled out by fear and remembrance. The shape inside the darkness stirred again, its outline still blurred, like a figure trapped behind thick fog. But Pat could see movement. Slow, deliberate, as if whatever existed within the shadow had been waiting for this exact moment to awaken. The whisper brushed against his ear again. Clearer now, a voice both familiar and wrong. A voice he had loved and feared at the same time. Pat, my promise. Do you remember? Pat felt the floor tilt beneath him. His vision flickered, as if the bakery itself had grown unstable. Walls bending ever so slightly. Shelves shifting like they wished to turn toward the shadowed corner. He stepped closer. He did not know why. He did not know whether it was loyalty, or guilt, or the binding pull of a promise made long before he understood its cost. He reached the edge of the table. The shadow trembled, like liquid struck by a soft vibration, rippling outward from an unseen core. He lifted his hand, and the shadow stretched upward to meet him, as if eager to touch him, as if hungry for the warmth of living flesh. Pat pulled back, his heart hammered, his legs nearly buckled, yet he could not step away. He felt anchored, pinned to the moment by the power of memory. He forced himself to stand straight, and he stared into the darkness, searching for the source of the voice. The shape inside began to separate, pulling itself free of the deepest part of the shadow. A silhouette, thin, bent, fragile, but unmistakably human. Pat felt his throat close. He recognized that height, that posture, that tilt of the head, even though the figure was made of night itself. Mother. The figure leaned toward him, its form wavering like smoke that refused to rise. Pat, my promise. You shall finish what I began. He shook his head slowly. His lips parted, his voice barely a whisper. I do not understand. The shadow bent forward, the air around him tightened, and suddenly he saw it. A faint outline beneath the darkness. A face, a mouth, two hollow eyes staring up at him. Eyes filled with something that felt like sorrow, or longing, or hunger. Pat stumbled back, his hip struck the counter. A tray rattled, flour puffed into the air, floating like pale dust caught in moonlight. He blinked, and the figure flickered, growing sharper, clearer, more solid than before. Pat, my promise. You shall finish the recipe. He froze, cold spread through his chest. He remembered that night now. The night he sat beside his mother as the storm raged outside. The night she pressed her flower-stained hand over his. The night she whispered the promise. A promise he had never fully understood. You must complete what I could not. You must finish the final recipe. And you must never abandon it. No matter what tries to stop you. At the time, he had thought she meant her dream bakery. Her legacy, her passion for creation. But now, facing the twisted reflection of her voice, he realized she had meant something else. Something older. Something far more dangerous. Mother, what recipe? The shadow's mouth curved, almost a smile, but far from human warmth. The recipe of returning. Pat's stomach tightened, his breath thinned, he felt as if invisible hands had closed around his ribs. He did not know the name, but his body reacted as if it did. As if the memory lived beneath his skin. Dormant, waiting, the air around the figure darkened, deepened, thickened, until the shadow resembled a well with no bottom. His mother's voice slipped out again. Smooth, calm, and unbearably cold. You have already begun. The dough you touched this morning. The scent you believed was new. The way the bakery felt different. It was the beginning. Your hands awakened it. Pat looked down at his palms. Flour covered them. Soft, white, harmless. Yet as he stared, the flour seemed to shimmer. Like tiny grains of pale ash under candlelight. He rubbed his fingers together. And felt something. A faint pulse. A heartbeat. Not his own. His breath shattered. He pressed his back against the counter. Eyes wide. No, this is not real. This is not what she wanted. But the figure leaned closer. The shadow spilling over the edge of the table. Pouring toward him like a dark tide. Pat could not move. His body locked in place. His limbs heavy. His voice trapped behind his tongue. The shadow reached the tips of his shoes. And the cold climbed upward. Slow, steady, claiming him inch by inch. Pat tried to lift his foot. He tried to speak. He tried to pull himself from the moment. But fear held him still. His mother's voice whispered again. Louder now, richer, filled with layers that did not belong to any living throat. Pat, my promise. You shall finish the recipe. And when you do, you shall bring me home. The cold surged up his legs. Climbing to his knees, his thighs, his chest, wrapping around his heart with a touch both gentle and merciless. The bakery lights flickered. The air trembled. Glass jars on the shelves began to shake. Sugars, spices, flowers, all vibrating to the rhythm of an unseen heartbeat. Pat felt the world narrow. His vision dimmed. The shadow drew closer, its face now only inches from his. Mother, please, tell me what you want me to do. The figure leaned in, its hollow eyes glowing faintly. And the darkness beneath the table began to open. Splitting like a mouth, wide, hungry, silent. Pat felt the pull, a slow, relentless drag, like gravity discovering a new direction. He tried to dig his fingers into the wooden counter. He tried to resist the suction of the growing void. But the promise, the one he had made without understanding, bound him more tightly than chains. The voice pressed against his ear. Warm, cold, human, inhuman. Pat, my promise. You shall bring me back. The void expanded. The bakery groaned. And Pat felt the floor vanish beneath his feet. As the darkness swallowed his ankles, his knees, his hips, he reached desperately toward the warm morning light, still shining through the window. But the light felt farther, and the voice felt closer. The shadow rose around him, wrapping his body, pressing against his skin, seeping into the seams of his clothes, curling around his throat like a whisper made solid. Pat's final breath trembled, as he felt the darkness pull him deeper. Down, 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 and he understood, too late, what his mother had truly asked of him, and what the final recipe required. The bakery fell silent, the air stilled, and the shadow closed, like a book snapped shut. The recipe of returning had begun, and Pat was no longer standing alone in the bakery. The silence inside the bakery deepened. A silence so complete, so heavy, that even the dust motes seemed unable to drift. For several long moments, nothing moved, nothing breathed, nothing lived. Then, a soft glow stirred within the shadowed corner. A faint shimmer, like a single spark beneath ash. Pat felt warmth touch his palm. A warmth he had not felt since his childhood. The warmth of his mother's hand. Not cold, not twisted, but gentle, comforting. He opened his eyes, slowly, fearfully, expecting the darkness to swallow him again. Instead, he stood in the center of the bakery. Whole, unharmed, bathed in the golden morning light. The shadowed corner was gone. The heavy darkness had lifted. The strange scent had vanished. leaving only the familiar sweetness of vanilla and warm dough. The bakery felt alive again. Peaceful, still, safe. He looked down. His hands were steady, clean. The strange pulse within the flour had faded, leaving only the simple touch of his craft. A quiet voice drifted through the air. Not a whisper, not an echo, but a memory, gentle, soft, free of the cold trembling that had filled it before. Pat, my promise is complete. Thank you. He closed his eyes. A single tear rolled down his cheek. It was not a tear of fear, but of release, of understanding. He realized then that the final recipe, the recipe of returning, had never been meant to bring his mother back in flesh. It had never been a call for her return to the world of the living. It had been her final wish. A wish to let go. A wish to pass on. A wish to rest. And she had needed him, her son, to finish the last step. To end the lingering shadow. To free the place that had held her last breath. Pat stepped toward the wooden table. The one where she had once taught him. The one that had been swallowed by darkness. It now glowed softly in the warm light. No trace of shadow remained. He placed both hands upon it, feeling the wood, smooth, sunlit, alive. Thank you, Mother. Rest well. The bell above the door chimed. A soft and peaceful note, carried gently by the morning breeze. Pat smiled, for the first time in many years. A smile without weight, without fear, without grief. He walked behind the counter, rolled up his sleeves, and returned to his craft. The bakery filled with warmth, with hope, with the scent of fresh bread rising in the oven. The promise